Welcome to our web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo, along with Eyewitness News analyst Lieutenant General Reginald Centracchio. I don't think anybody wants to hear about the hurricane season, especially after the winter we've just had and all this stuff. But we're going to talk about that in just a second. A couple of things, General, we want to touch upon before we start talking about the weather is Iran and the Taliban and the spring surge. Let's start with that right now. Have we seen that before at around springtime? The Taliban has really increased their violence in Afghanistan?
I think historically they've done similar kinds of things when they talk about taking advantage of the weather. They just announced yesterday and today that they intend to go ahead with the surge. This is the first time they've gone against the Afghan government and its security forces without U.S. combat troops there. Significant challenge.
So what happens now at this point, because there are no forces there?
Yeah, they're going to have to really determine that they can in fact take care of themselves, and especially if you get any kind of help from other external sources, specifically the Kurds, and what they're trying to do in reference to helping maintain their own security. But the challenge is going to be between the rebels and the Taliban itself and the forces that Afghanistan is able to put to bear in the form of its military and security forces.
So if the Afghan army can really, hang on to this and keep the peace, that would be a major feather in their cap. And you're going to hear some people say, well, see, we didn't need the United States.
Well, we don't need the United States now, hopefully. But the United States is still there in some capacity to train them. They're not there in a combat role. If they can pass the test, then we will have achieved, certainly, a well-worth effort, especially in Afghanistan.
All right. We've been seeing for weeks about some type of plan with Iran and the president issuing a warning, Iran sending weapons now to Yemen. Where we stand with this whole quote-unquote peace talks?
Yeah, President Obama gave a warning to Iran today, suggesting that they need to stop this, and if they don't, it will certainly hinder our future talks about the nuclear talks that we're having. At the same time, I think he's inferring that, he hasn't said this, but I think we're looking at possibly another Cuban Missile Crisis where we'll attempt to board those ships, especially if we think they're carrying weapons to the insurgents in Yemen.
Okay.
That's going to be a challenge.
All right. Obviously, we're going to follow those two stories very closely. Let's go close to home. You were the EMA Director in the state of Rhode Island. I mentioned about hurricane season, which starts June 1st. We still haven't seen the predictions yet, but just because we didn't see the predictions doesn't mean that the state is getting ready.
Yeah, right. You mentioned nobody wants to hear about hurricanes. Unfortunately, the people who have to plan for it do. And exactly what you said is they're starting to look and prepare that what they have in place is adequate, that they have the proper training exercises to ensure we have proper communications, especially when the fact that we have some new changes both at the EMA and National Guard level. All
right, Peter Gaynor is the new Rhode Island EMA Director. Obviously, General McBride is retiring in June, so we'll have a new Adjutant General. How does this all play in when you have two new people there?
Well, first of all, this is the first time, too, that the EMA is not part of the National Guard. When you have Peter Gaynor, who came out of Providence, certainly we don't have to worry about experience and knowing what to do. In the case of the Adjutant General, he or she may be required to enter into a new support role in reference to how the Guard and EMA play versus having the Guard be the director and have the executive director at the EMA level. So it's going to be a challenge, and much of that has to do with this coming month as to how they program that and who calls the shots, who supplies the resources, and so on.
So what are they doing right now at the
right now they're starting to get the plans out to make sure they can have an adequate communications plan, to make sure they're checking with the towns and cities all during this month, because as you know, hurricane season starts on the 1st of June or thereabouts, and that's not the time to start planning. So all of the month of May basically is taking the plans off the shelves, making sure they're still current.
All right, quickly, General, Hurricane Barry, we heard about that in Providence, but Sandy really did a number in Westerly and Narragansett.
Right, and the only thing we can do in the southern area of the state is to make sure we can either restore the beaches or build additional breakwaters, and much of that is being done as we speak.
Do you like what we've been doing to prevent massive power outages again?
I'll tell you, Mike, if anything was done of any significance in the past several years, it's been National Grid getting out ahead of it, making sure they're taking the trees down that overhang power lines, and I think that's really responsible for some of the low power outages that we've had in the last several storms.
All right, we got to hope Tony can work his magic and have a nice, calm hurricane season. That's key. General, thank you for your thoughts. Thanks for watching.